COVID misinformation, Ukrainian fake news. There's bad information everywhere. Luckily, your government are here to censor everything because you're too stupid to understand it yourself. Thank God for the government. Hello there, you 5.2 million awakening wonders, continuing to awaken in spite of the obstacles, in spite of the censorship, in spite of the complexity and nuance around awakening. We're going to be talking about misinformation around coronavirus and around Ukraine. So it'll be one of those videos where I'm gently tiptoeing and caveating my way through it while still worrying a bit about that fallen log in the log store. Hey, I'm all over the UK. You can come see me in Carlisle in April, Plymouth in April, Glasgow in May, Bristol in May, Blackpool. Come and see me. There's a link in the description. You can come see me live. I'm telling you, this is a fantastic live experience. I hope it's well funny, but it's a lot more than that. It's an opportunity for us to be together. Anyway, let's get into this misinformation and be very careful about this stuff as we go, because, you know, I don't want to misinformation you. Do a bit of misinformation before you know it, you're a terrorist. Let's see what they're saying now. This article is by Caitlin Johnston. Kremlin-backed media outlets have been banned throughout the European Union, both on television and on apps and online platforms. Now, obviously, with the terrible war in Ukraine, with Putin's monstrous actions that are leading to the death of Ukrainian people the same as you and I, who have the right to live, who have the right to freedom, who have the right to sovereignty and democracy, you would think anything that we do is deemed necessary and is vital, and as long as it's leading to Ukrainian people being safe and this war being short and the best possible outcomes for Ukrainian people, any action that you take is understandable. However, I will say that, don't you think, I'll just decide for myself what propaganda is. Of course, Russia Today, a state-funded Russian TV station, is gonna, I imagine, support opinions that are convenient for Russian agenda. But I suppose another thing you might say is Russia Today might have a different perspective from Western media, which I'm sure are completely free from propagandist agenda and the way that they're sponsored and the way that they're funded and the people that sit on their boards. You know, none of that could lead to particular perspectives being highlighted, could it? The federal government is putting pressure on social media platforms to block Russian media. Twitter, historically the last of the major online platforms to jump on any new internet censorship escalation, is now actively minimizing the number of people who see Russian media content, saying that it is reducing the content's visibility and taking steps to significantly reduce the circulation of this content on Twitter. This is why I think it's dangerous to get into this kind of simplistic, sanctimonious, pious certainty, moral certainty. And this is wrong, I feel that we're dealing with a complex and nuanced situation. What's not complicated? It's wrong that people in Ukraine are suffering. It's wrong that Putin has invaded Ukraine. But when it gets to controlling information, man, I'm not so sure that I like that, because what's being established is a principle now. During Russia's egregious attack on Ukraine, we're going to ban all Russian media because you might get confused, you don't know how to discern information, you're an idiot. That's basically how governments operate, right? Can you imagine a situation down the line where other forms of speech might suddenly be forbidden and censored and annexed? Because I can. Twitter is also placing warning labels on all Russia-backed media and delivering a pop-up message informing you that you are committing wrongthink if you try to share or even like a post linking to such outlets on the platform. It has also placed the label Russia state-affiliated media on every tweet made by the personal accounts of employees of those platforms, baselessly giving the impression that the dissident opinions tweeted by those accounts are paid Kremlin content and not simply their own legitimate perspectives. That's shutting down any opinion coming out of Russia, including potential dissident opinions, criticisms of Russian actions. We read on my podcast Under the Skin with Yanis Varoufakis a letter from Russian citizens outright condemning Putin's imperialist actions, saying they're against it, that these are the actions taken on behalf of oligarchs, the kind of thing that any right-minded person would think about any aggressive war on ordinary people. And that kind of information, that'll be badged up, as Caitlin Johnston says, wrongthink. Also, if you prohibit conversation, what solution is there going to be then? If you forego diplomacy, communication, the possibility of common ground being found, the not monstering and monsterifying people from other territories, accepting that there are good and bad people everywhere, that the line between good and bad, as the Russian writer Solzhenitsyn said, the line between good and evil runs not between nations or religions and creeds, but through every human heart. By not acknowledging your own fallibility and your own flaws, by simplifying arguments to good and bad, you prevent diplomatic, convivial, collegiate solutions and require that there is an ongoing conflict because there's no bloody intercommunication. Even Solzhenitsyn won't be like, Solzhenitsyn, where's he from? Well, Russia. I mean, he was no, I don't hear it. Vetoed. Some are complaining that this new label has led to an online harassment amid the post 9/11-like anti-Russia hysteria. This is all on top of all other drastic escalations in censorship which came roaring in at the beginning of the Ukraine war. For years, US lawmakers have been using threats of profit-destroying consequences to pressure Silicon Valley companies into limiting online speech in a way that aligns with the interests of Washington, effectively creating a system of government censorship by proxy. So it doesn't even have to become legislated. Pressure can be applied and it will be privately undertaken. And what does that mean? No democracy. It would appear that we're seeing a new expansion of this phenomenon today, and the imperial media are pushing for more. Articles and news segments warning of the sinister threat posed by Russian propaganda to misinform and divide Western populations using the internet are being churned out at a rate that's only likely to increase as this latest narrative management campaign gets into full gear. So we're not saying that Russia are good. We're not saying that Putin is good. We're not saying that this war is anything other than terrible. And utmost in all of our consideration should be the suffering of Ukrainian people. But like other recent events, if this tragedy is used to benefit the interests of the powerful in subtle ways that may not be revoked after the crisis, I'd stay alert if I were you. As tends to happen whenever a consensus begins to form that a certain category of speech must be purged from the internet, imperial spinmeisters are already working to expand the definition of Russian propaganda, which must be purged from the internet, to include independent anti-imperialist commentators. Do you remember during the pandemic, which was like literally yesterday or whatever, but no one talks about anymore, that there was a point where the literal dictionary definition of anti-vax changed from being, anti-vaccines to anti-vaccine mandates. So language is used in peculiar ways. This is when you know you're in a peculiar situation. I know a lot of you ain't super fans of Chomsky, but I'll just at this point cite him in a manner that, it's one of his most famous quotes and you guys might like it. The smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum, even encourage the more critical and dissident views. That gives people the sense that there's free thinking going on, while all the time the presuppositions of the system are being reinforced by the limits put on the range of the debate. Not to mention the elitist assumption that you are unable to discern what information is good for you. Have you not seen enough from your leaders in recent years to know that they are not morally superior to you? I come from UK. We had our government partying their way through the whole coronavirus pandemic while people weren't allowed to leave their homes. So that's the reality of what we're dealing with. Not some superior species. Well, we can look at Russia today and we can see that that's wrong. Those idiots, though, they won't understand. They get all carried away and go all Russian by morning. Oh, if they see that, they'll be scoffing down Stroganoff by 9 a.m. And it's not even a breakfast dish. RT's audience makes up about 0.04% of TV viewing in the UK. Oh no, this phenomena. It's the new Squid Game. Russia Today. No one's interested in it. It's nothing to worry about. It's establishing a precedent. Oh yeah, shut it down. It's too confusing. This is the exercise of control. It's de facto elitism. It's de facto aristocracy. You can't decide. You don't know what's good for you, you poor things. Just sit down. Watch the television. Shut up. We'll do the thinking. Oh, they're eating a stroganoff. This isn't about RT. It's about the agenda to continually expand and normalise the censorship of unauthorised speech. Normalise it. We just accept that that's what you do. You carry a passport. You do as you're told. You don't watch that kind of media. Is that the world you want to live in? Well, if it isn't, stay very, very present because you're being walked into it. That's what it was about when they were pretending it was about the need to fight COVID misinformation before that. And when they were pretending it was about the need to fight US extremism before that. And when they were pretending it was about the need to defend election security before that. And when they were pretending it was about the need to fight Russian propaganda the first time before that one cycled back round again. like flares. The virulent post-9/11-like hysteria about Russia that's been promoted by one-sided mass media reporting on the war and by the 5 years of fact-free conspiracy mongering which preceded it has created an environment where you'll get shouted down on social media for voicing any opinion about this conflict apart from saying Putin invaded because he is evil and hates freedom. Voices calling for diplomacy and de-escalation are being systematically drowned out. Meanwhile, you've got massively influential pundits like Sean Hannity calling for a direct NATO airstrike on a Russian military convoy in Ukraine, without the slightest risk of losing his immense platform for advocating a move that would probably lead to a very fast, very radioactive Third World War. Yeah, if you're going to censor something, censor people advocating for a nuclear war. I think, can we agree that that would be a bad thing? On the other side of the illusory US partisan divide, you've got MSNBC pundits like Richard Engel and Clint Watts also calling for direct hot war with Russia. Oh, so different across the spectrum of mainstream media. Why? Over there, Sean Hannity, a right-wing person, saying war on Russia. And then over there on the left-wing side, well, we've got those liberals saying war on Russia. Oh, which one to choose? Now, theoretically, the actual decision makers of the imperial war machine know better than to initiate a hot war with Russia because it would likely lead to an unthinkable chain of events in which everyone loses. But what these insane, strange, Lovian calls for nuclear Armageddon do, even if they never come to fruition, is push the acceptable spectrum of debate far towards the most hawkish extremes possible. Right, so we start to understand this is what's normal, this is what's on the telly, wherever you watch it, whether you're watching MSNBC or Hannity, everyone's saying the same thing. War, yeah, we should bomb them, Yeah, we should bomb them. I think I'll have some struggle. Hey, put that down, you're in a free country! Forbidding Russian things is mental. There's not a category called Russia. There's Russian imperialism and the Russian war machine. There's American imperialism and the American war machine. And you can decide for yourself which ones you think are worst. But by saying that like Hendrix is bad or Tchaikovsky is bad because of their affiliation, that's a separate category. When are you going to stop believing that these things called nations are real and essentially just a mask for the interests of the powerful to distract you? A flag is a veil that prevents you from seeing the truth. When you've got the hawks screaming that Putin is Hitler and calling for airstrikes on the Russian military while the doves are using extremely mitigated both sides language and taking great pains to forcefully condemn Putin to avoid being shouted down. Could I forcefully condemn Putin again? And censored, what you wind up with is a spectrum of debate that has been pulled so far towards insanity that the moderate position becomes support for unprecedented acts of economic warfare and funding a brutal insurgency in Ukraine. By creating a sort of hysterical framework in which conversation and debate can take place, it means that essentially the agenda of the powerful can be met without resistance. For example, sanctions seems now, compared to bombing our planet out of existence, a relatively modest measure. But there is complexity even with a measure such as sanctions. Many people believe, of course, that sanctions will negatively impact ordinary Russian people that are the same as us. And I reckon Putin might find a way to get his hands on a jam sandwich and make his way through this, don't you? As a result, advocating for Western powers to initiate de-escalation and diplomacy becomes an extremist position comparable to, or worse than, advocating for hot war with a nuclear superpower. How can that be? How can that be more extreme? In reality, it's the obvious, moderate, sane position on the table. But taking that position unequivocally would be disastrous for the career of any mainstream politician or pundit in today's environment, because the spectrum of debate has been pulled so far towards hawkish brinkmanship. Essentially what's being controlled, per the Chomsky quote, is the permitted area of discourse. So someone saying, should we look for a peaceful solution, is now regarded as an extremist. And what's not regarded as extremist is the knee-jerk condemnation of like Russian cultural artifacts like Tchaikovsky and Solzhenitsyn and Tolstoy, which for me is reminiscent of the 1940s, where we're smashing up Italian ice cream shops in this country and Japanese people in America were being banged up in internment camps. How about learning an important lesson that global politics doesn't operate on the level of nations? There are elite interests backed by and veiled by the mask of nationhood. Japanese people, Russian people, German people, Belgian people, people from the Congo, people from Latvia, all human beings, all with more in common with one another than they have in common with the people that govern them, whose interests ultimately dominate geopolitical outcomes. Whoever controls the narrative controls the world. The powerful understand this, while the general public mostly does not. Are you beginning to understand? Are you beginning to? That's all we've been seeing in these attempts to regulate ideas and information as human communication becomes more and more rapid and networked. How extraordinary that communication becomes more immediate, more accessible, more possible. It's met with incredible censorship, control of what is permissible in the debate. Once more, to many of the points raised here, this is not to advocate for war. I'm anti-war, I'm anti-violence, I'm anti-aggression, I'm anti-centralised power, I'm anti the pursuit of imperialist means that put the lives of people of Ukraine and Russia and America and who knows where else ultimately at risk. Now that we are in this situation, what type of ideas might lead to solution? Are you seeing these ideas discussed? Or broadly speaking, are you seeing ideas propagated that might benefit certain sets of interests on both sides? Do you trust your media? Do you trust your government? If so, let me know how, and let me know in the comments below what you think about this issue, what you've learned, what areas we need to discuss, where we need to be more sensitive, where we need to be more alert, because I want to learn. I know that I might be wrong. I know that above all else. Let me know what you know in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe. Do you know only 48% of you subscribe? We need you all subscribed. Get subscribed so as many people as possible see these videos. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one or this one. Remember, I'm on tour all over the UK. There's a link in the description. Come see me in Newcastle, Hull, Bristol, Plymouth, Glasgow. Beautiful British places where we can get together and communicate freely. Most importantly of all though, if you can, stay free.